Nobody drives in LA. LA mayoral candidate Rae Huang invited us over to her apartment in West LA to record this podcast, along with her director of community engagement, Gabby Matheny. We covered a lot. As with any major election, there's a lot folks want to know about the candidates. We kept our discussion focused on transit and mobility mostly. We've included links in the show notes to other podcasts which may give you a more complete picture of who Rae is. We referenced a few of Rae's videos, and we've included links to those in the description. Specifically, Flock, Nightmare, Rae's LAPD video, and Metro Board for Metro Riders videos. If you're listening to this podcast when it comes out, Gabby wanted us to mention that Rae's having a Raevolution Get Out the Vote event on May 4th at the Lodge Room. We're also linking to that in the show notes. I will offer you a quick glimpse into Kyle Mind. I often feel self-conscious when interacting with public figures or people who I perceive to have their stuff together. Rae made us feel perfectly comfortable, even after I dumped my travel mug full of backpack coffee all over her floor. This was a warm, welcoming, and fun conversation. And even when we all disagreed, I think it's safe to say that we all want to promote safer streets and car dependence and make our city more livable. Folks often disagree about who the right person to do that job is. Regardless of who you plan to vote for or if you're undecided, we hope this episode will help give you some new insights. We hope to have more conversations in this vein. If you are an LA City resident, any campaign you donate to will be matched 6-1 by the city. So if you're planning to support a grassroots campaign or any other campaign, now's a great time to do it. Generally, we start by talking about how we got here for those of us who are regularly on the podcast, Eric, Ivy, and I, how we physically got to our location today, and then for our guests, how you got here physically and how you got here in the big picture to where you are now with your activism and in this case, mayoral campaign. So, Ivy, do you want to start us off?
Sure, since I'm a fellow West Sider. So today after work, I went home to take out my dogs for a little bit before coming back here. And I was telling Kyle and Eric I was cutting it a little bit close. But I was like, I'm going to finesse the system. And it's telling me I can't make this transfer in time, but I will. I'll do it. So from my apartment, I took the Big Blue Bus 8 and then transferred at Ocean Park in Bundy to the Big Blue Bus 14. And I made it here.
Since last time we recorded that, it seems like Metro is sharing real-time information again, so that's nice. We've talked about this before. I was going to the 92 and it was like, you're gonna have to wait 20 minutes. I was like, not if I put a little pep in my step and catch the one that's coming here in 1 minute, which I did. So I took the 92 to the E line. And then the E line, well, Transit was saying it's gonna take a lot longer than I thought it was. And then I realized that Transit's directions were having me get off the E line, wait for 70 minutes for a Big Blue Bus to go one stop and then walk 4 minutes. Or I could just walk 8 minutes. And I was like, I think I'll just walk. But then I ended up getting off a stop early so that I could go grab a bite to eat and then hang out in the park and eat it. So, yeah.
I was initially going to wheel down from my apartment near Pershing Square to 7th and Metro. However, as soon as I left my apartment, it started raining. And if you look at the one-wheel anatomy, there's like the big giant wheel in the center, and it's open and exposed to the air. So whenever it rains, just liquid and whatever is on the ground just sprays up at you. And
it doesn't have a fender, huh?
It does not have a fender, which I probably, now that you mention it, I should add one of those to it. Because whenever it drizzles, whenever it drizzles, just your pants and shoes and everything just get soaked. And I wanted to look somewhat presentable today, so I jumped ship and ran back to Pershing Square to hop on the B to get to 7th to get down to the west side, and then I wheeled over here because it was dry. It was dry from Expo Bundy. So Gabby and Rae, how did y'all get here today?
Well, I live in Highland Park, and so I do not come to the West Side very often, but I will always come over to this side of town for Rae. This is my second time in Rae's neighborhood. Last time we met at Stoner Park. But today I was coming from my apartment in Highland Park, my rent-controlled transit adjacent apartment, SB 79 rough region. You know, if and when SB 79 actually gets implemented, my apartment would be roughly in that region. But I walked uphill to the A line. I was looking at my phone, checking on some different stuff, and realized, oh, the train is coming really soon. And so I started hustling more, saw that the train was at the platform, decided to run for it because, you know, why not? Why would you not run for the train when you have the opportunity? There was another one coming in 8 minutes, but, you know, run for the train when you can. So I took the A line. It was quite uneventful. I transferred at the Arts District, a little Tokyo stop from the regional connector, and waited for the E line. Actually managed to get on the right train because that station I often end up getting on the wrong train. I get on another A line or another E line or the one going the wrong place because it's all one platform and I have to be paying attention. But I got on the right train and I was just working on the train, on like catching up on our campaign Discord and helping out our volunteers. And then I got off the train and got here about 5 minutes before we were supposed to be here because Metro was reliable, which is always exciting. Ran into Eric waiting, heard Kyle coming up behind me on the one wheel, heard like a very gentle hum right behind me.
A gentle hum and an aggressive Scranton accent.
Yes. Yeah, and that's how I got here.
Cool. And Rae, how about you?
Yeah, well, I live here, so thank you so much for coming out to my apartment. And so what did I do? I opened my door and welcomed you all and had my dog make sure she didn't bark too loud when you all were walking in. So.
Usually our discussion format is pretty loose and we'll, take it where it goes. But, you are running for mayor in LA right now. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about your journey to running for mayor and what brought you here. And we can branch off from that discussion as it goes.
Yeah, certainly. So over the last decade, I've been working as a community organizer here in Los Angeles. I started off by organizing actually around my public school, and then I started organizing with CLU, Clergy and Laity United for Economic Justice. The J is silent. And I worked on economic justice, so focused on supporting labor unions as their workers were fighting for a fair contract and dignity in the workplace. I also worked on immigration reform and making sure that we were able to provide sanctuary for folks who are looking for a safe place to land here in Los Angeles. And then I continued on to work for LA Voice, where I worked on housing justice, particularly around affordable housing. And then I'm now deputy director at Housing Now, which is a statewide housing justice coalition. And throughout my time that I've been organizing, we have, as a community here in Los Angeles, identified campaigns and developed solutions to help be able to solve our problems here in Los Angeles. We know one of them is be able to expand the metro through Measure M. We also, for example, passed Measure A to be able to have funding for affordable housing, Measure ULA. And the reason that I'm running is because constantly over and over again, what we are seeing in City Hall is our city leaders weaken our movement forward to actually finally get transit, for example, to finally get affordable housing, to finally be able to come up with solutions to end homelessness for good here in Los Angeles. And so when I saw Mayor Bass again weaken Measure ULA through the state legislature, which has been my avenue over the last couple of years, I just got frustrated. And together with community leaders, we decided, it's time for us to have our own mayoral race campaign where we can definitively put a progressive candidate forward who's going to actually ensure that the community solutions are going to be carried out and that we'll have the political will in City Hall.
Why do we so often approve things like ULA and SB 79 and HLA and then look for ways to not implement it? Why, it seems so counterintuitive. It's like the people speak, we're like, yes, and then we voted for you to do it, and then we're like, let's actually not do that.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. I think it's because the solutions that we end up putting forward, like HLA, right? These were all community organized goals that we set for ourselves because we saw City Hall not doing their job. And when we see City Hall not being able to move us forward towards the needs that we have, I'm so proud to be an Angelino where I get to be a part of a community that says, you know what, well, if nobody's going to fix our problem, we'll do it ourselves. So we do the research. We have our experts. We have brilliant people who live and work here in Los Angeles, together with communities, together with our neighborhoods, our families. We came up with solutions, but the problem is City Hall, they're not focused on supporting us. They're focused on and committed to the people who, if you will, they've been bought out by, right? The corporations, the lobbyists, especially, for example, AGLA, the real estate lobby here in Los Angeles, the landlord lobby here in Los Angeles, is so wealthy and has so much power. Another group is the LAPPL, the police union, has so much power. That's why continually the budget just dropped, for example, by Mayor Bass. And we saw, again, hundreds of millions of dollars going to the police. Again, even though it's so clear year after year, for example, the People's Budget LA Coalition does a people's survey every year to say, where do you want, Angelinos, where do you want your money going in the budget? What do you prioritize and need right now? And over again, we see at the very top, housing, we see transit, we see health, we see education, we see food security, and at the very bottom, it's police. But yet, we don't see our City Hall moving forward in that direction because their priorities are not ours.
Everybody hates California Democrats. When I talk to my friends from literally any other state, regardless of what their political persuasion is, it is just vitriol and rage, and California Dems are the butt of everyone's jokes, and clearly the puppy agrees. Progressives, I think, are having maybe a bit of a coming into a mainstream moment, with Mayor Mamdani in New York right now. But I'm wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about, like California is a very blue, very seemingly homogenous state, but that's not actually what's going on when you get involved just about anywhere, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Tracy Park is a Democrat, right? Technically.
Sometimes
on
you
paper,
forget.
currently.
Yeah, Rick Caruso, Democrat. Big letters on the mailers that clutter your mailbox. When we had John Yee on, we talked about he's running against a Democrat, and then this is my own take, is that I think people say, okay, well, there's a Democrat in power and I'm a Democrat, so more of the same. They kind of benefit from the fact that there aren't very many viable challengers to that.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild when you look at the makeup of our city council that technically 14 of the 15 are Democrats and one is an independent. And both Tracy Park as a Democrat and John Lee as an independent have been registered as Republicans in the past. But it just goes to show how often people will change their political affiliation in order to make themselves electable in California. And I think it's really hard to see through that unless you're an incredibly engaged and researched voter, which
most people aren't at the local level.
People don't have the time, honestly, to research all the candidates.
That's what they should have. I say they should have an asterisk. And if I did that, it would be that. It would say independent, like former green, and I'd be like, I'll own that.
Yeah. And that's where organizations like DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, can come in, and it lends a certain sense of legitimacy. We know which of our candidates on city council have been endorsed by DSA, and that tells you that they are farther left. They're not Democrat with an asterisk next to them. And so I think that can be a helpful indication. The DSA voter guide is always incredibly helpful.
If the California Post uses their name and spells it with a backwards R, you know that that's someone you support.
Well, Rae, I don't know if you even know this. The California Post has been crashing out about you today, literally today, the day we are recording.
Dude, that's a t-shirt idea. It's always a California Post.
Yeah, exactly.
Cover image.
It's a badge of honor, honestly.
It is. I call it the California Post anti-endorsement.
No, it's like hip hop albums with the parental advisory when I was a kid. It was like, oh, so this is one of the good ones because you're not supposed to buy this. It comes with a warning.
One of the ways that I've been thinking about our two-party system is it's not a two-party system of blue and red. It's actually a party system around the working class and the billionaires. Because you could be a Democrat, but be committed to taking money from lobbyists and be committed to ensuring that the wealthy get to keep their wealth, right? For example, let's just name the fact that almost the majority of the candidates running for governor of California right now are not supportive of the billionaire tax, which I think is ridiculous, right? And so we are in a moment where I think things are shifting, where the working families of the US are asking the question, wait, who actually represents us? And I think that's a question that we need to ask here in Los Angeles is who are the leaders who actually represent us, who actually want to ensure that working families are going to get their fair share here in Los Angeles. We have the money. Here's one of the biggest things that's been so frustrating. A lot of the media and, if you will, more conservative talk show hosts oftentimes will ask me, well, what are you going to do about the budget? The budget is the biggest concern. And I will say over and over again, we have the money here in the city. California is the 4th largest economy in the world, and Los Angeles makes up 1/3 of that money, makes up 1/3 of that economy. We have the wealth here, but us working families, we're not seeing it. So it's time we begin to challenge that.
This is something I've pointed out before, and that people come back at me and they don't believe it. I'm like, look it up, because I'll say New York has the highest gross municipal product of any city on the planet. Tokyo's number 2. If you go to Tokyo, it looks like a city that has the 2nd highest gross municipal product. And then Los Angeles is number 3rd, which makes it the richest city in the richest state in the richest country in the history of the planet, and as far as we know, the universe. And people are like, there's no way that's possible. I'm like, it is. Like, and they're like, well, what about per capita? And I'm like, then we drop down to 4th. But still, like, there is money here. And there's just not money for anything. You put it actually a good way in a debate where it was something about like, I should just let you say it, but it was like, you either defund the police or they defund us. Something like along those lines, because that's really what it is. It's not about, it's a budget. It's like, how much do we put towards this? Do we give it 50% and then have one really well-funded department and like 50 or whatever agencies and departments that are underfunded? Or do we look at, do it a different way?
Yeah, I think the video that the California Post is unhappy about was the LAPD video that we just put up. And I believe the first line you said was LAPD is defunding you. So again, that spin on it. And I feel like people hear that when they hear it, they're like, oh, like it clicks something in their heads.
I mean, the numbers don't lie, right? And where we put our money shows us where our values are. We oftentimes will say that in the People's Budget LA campaign, that the budget is a moral document. It tells us exactly what we value here in the city. And so if we put all of our money into the police, what are we valuing? Right? Or what are we, if you will, protecting? Who are we actually protecting? Which is oftentimes a system and oftentimes an estate, and it doesn't belong to the working people. I would argue, and I think this ties into, this particular podcast and the series and the conversations we have here, which is around the idea of when we talk about public safety, what do we mean by safety? Here in this city, homicides have actually gone down while the numbers of police officers have gone down. Meanwhile, the biggest killer of our children is traffic collisions. Gabby, you and I have talked about this quite a bit because we're both parents of kids. And when we talk about public safety, we need to talk about the reality, which is that 300 people die a year because of traffic collisions, not even counting the number of people who have been seriously injured and now maybe can't go to work, maybe have to take time off, and are having maybe a more challenging life because of it. So let's talk about real safety, which means we have to ensure that our streets are safe for everybody. Let's talk about infrastructure. So we should be putting resources into things that actually make this city truly safe for everybody.
I feel like a lot of the people that kind of support giving the police more money, it's like a lizard brain reaction. I can't think of a nicer way of putting it. But it's like born out of frustration, which is understandable. It's like, there's so much trash out there. The lights are out. The streets have potholes. Let's just give cops more money. And it's like, so they can shoot on the lights and shoot the trash away and shoot the potholes out of existence? Like, that doesn't make any sense. If you look at the police, you never see a police, God bless them, their uniforms are always like crisp and clean, and their cars, and there's always like 8 of them to respond to every single thing, and there's a helicopter up above, and you're like,
At least one.
Yeah, you're like, I'm just calling about, this pothole. This couch that was abandoned on the side of the road.
Our street lights are out, but we have the helicopter spotlights, so it's fine. You just make sure you get under one of those and you'll be able to, you won't get hit by a car. 2
of my neighbors had their car was stolen from behind our apartment building from the parking lot, and they didn't know when it happened. They called the police and they were like, hey, we want to file a report or whatever. Our car got stolen. They're like, you should be seeing a helicopter pretty soon. They're like, what? Why? And they sent out a helicopter.
Oh my goodness.
And then my neighbors ended up finding the car. Someone had taken it to joyride and abandoned it on a bridge over the LA River. And they're like, oh, we found it. And they're like, okay, well, call off the helicopters now.
It's fine. It was just $3,000.
We weren't sure where the car was, but we were pretty sure it wasn't in the sky.
Well, talking about the debate earlier, there was a fun story on the way to the debate, right, Eric, where you ran into...
Do you want to tell the story?
Is that...
Yeah. Well, I'll say, okay, so I was leaving 7th Street Metro Center, which first I just want to point out, you said 7th and Metro, and you're not the only person that's done that. Because
I saw your comment.
I made that comment on the Metro page. I was like, raise your... I didn't even realize that Kyle had said that in on one of the podcasts. But I was like,
did I?
I said, raise your hand if you call it 7th and Metro and you don't know why. And a lot of people are like, yeah, we do that, don't we? Anyway, but I think I've done that too, 7th and Metro. It just sounds like that should be the name. But I'm like, wait, what's the and? Anyway, sorry. 7th Street Metro Center, I was leaving. I was like, how do I get to this debate? Why is it in such a transit-unfriendly part of town? City West, which is the rebranding since the 70s of this sort of sliver of MacArthur Park, Westlake on the other side of the freeway that they want to tie to downtown. But it doesn't feel tied to downtown. It feels very separated when you have to cross over the 110 freeway. And GPS is telling you, run across this on-ramp to the 110 North, and then climb over a guardrail. And I'm like, it's telling me to break laws, it feels like. And then I look ahead and I see Rae, and I'm like, are you by any chance going to the mayoral debate? And she said, yeah. And I was like, I think we're both following the same directions. And it could have just told us Wilshire. That's what it really should have said, just cross Wilshire. But that just, I felt like it was so symbolic on a lot of levels, like of how much of just being a pedestrian is an afterthought.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and the irony of it being the Streets for All debate that we were heading towards as well.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
So that's how we met, that fateful day.
Yep.
I think we were both trying to cross that street where there was no sidewalk.
I mean, I was like, no, I zoomed in and I was like, no, we're supposed to cross the guardrail, and that seems, what if you're...
Yeah, my directions looked like they were trying to walk me directly onto a freeway on-ramp. And so I turned around and tried a different route. Yeah.
And there's just so many times like that in Los Angeles where the signal to pedestrians is, you're doing it the wrong way. Like, why aren't you doing this in a car? I had a friend, I think I've told this story in the podcast before. I had a friend visiting from Scotland, and he was like, 1 minute I was just walking up Glendale Boulevard, and now I think I'm on a freeway. And I was like, no, that's just the bridge between us and Atwater. You're on the right path. And he's like, because it feels really hostile, and I think I'm gonna get arrested. And I'm like, no, that's just how it is.
I mean, it does feel hostile.
Yeah, it's like the sidewalk, because it just keeps getting more and more narrow until it's like a foot wide. And you're like, yeah, totally. I'm like, there's a plaque there. That's how you know you're supposed to be there, because how else could you read the plaque if you didn't go on this tightrope?
It's so crazy, too, because we literally have, like, the best weather of any place in the country, like, some of the best weather in the world. And, like, LA is beautiful, and it's such a hostile environment sometimes to move around in as a pedestrian or as someone who's using alternate forms of transit.
Yeah, and it's flat. So like of all the places to be able to bike around the city, this is one of the best ones to walk around the city.
I will point out, when people counter that a lot of times, they're like, well, it's just too big. And I'm like, but the planet's the same size for everybody. Like, where we draw municipal boundaries differs. And also, like, when we talk about walkable or transitable neighborhoods, it doesn't mean that you have to go from Pomona to Malibu and then, like, Gorman to San Clemente Island and be like, okay, I covered it all. That's not your job. Like, walkable just means that you can be able to walk to everything that you need or want and your job in your neighborhood easily. And, like, we have walkable pockets. And we have walkable places that, I bring this up a lot, we have walkable places like Olvera Street that were created by getting parking off of a street And then people are like, okay, I will happily drive down there and park in this surface parking lot so I can enjoy walking around O'Farrill Street, get back in my car and drive home.
That is the reality, is that you have to drive. I remember, because it's so unsafe for me to bike with my kids to bikeable parts of the city. So we'll just mainly bike around my neighborhood, which is Sawtell. But I now, for my kids to be able to bike in Santa Monica, because Santa Monica is a much biker-friendly area, I will have to drive them to Santa Monica, and then we can bike around, because I tried biking them together before on their regular streets, even though they're considered bike-safe areas. They were not, and I worry about my kids' safety, and that's the reality of LA.
And definitely the connection, too, even between where we are here going up Bundy, which feels like a highway when you're going there.
It felt scary to cross, honestly. It's like make eye contact with all 8 people in every lane of this.
In every lane. And 2, for a lot of the crosswalks, I mean, when I take the one wheel around, especially when I lived on the west side, I would, wheel around in that thing a whole bunch. But there are a lot of very deep, very paved over, and they're just part of the road now, like hidden potholes or hidden divots. I'll be going across on that thing, and if I don't, catch like just the way the shadow is hitting the pothole, oh great, I'm on my face now.
Exactly.
At like half of the intersections between, the bike path and all of the streets going up. I don't know what actually compass direction it is, but
well, north isn't up. That's a geographic bias, I will say, as a cartographer.
Kyle's compass: up, left, right. Up, left, right. You know what I'm talking about.
I never eat soggy waffles.
Yeah.
East down, west up. Yeah.
I heard that SpongeBob thing where it's like east. I thought you meant Weast.
If I'm going to use it my wish list item right now, I think I want to codify Weast as an actual direction.
Yes.
Like, here we go. Let's do that. I'm going to get these terms wrong, definitely. But Rae, one thing that you've talked about is having a public bank and is it a public
social housing?
Social housing.
Right, we got social housing, we got public bank, and we have.
I think you mentioned capital infrastructure
that's
plan,
that's
which is
Capital
very hard to say.
infrastructure plan. So perhaps can you do some term defines and tell us about what these things are, how they might work, and
So what I love about the plan that we have for the campaign, by the way, this plan or platform came out of our community leaders, came out of our volunteers, came out of experts from Los Angeles that worked together, where we had roundtables and came up with a cohesive plan for the city. So what is it? One of the things that we need is a capital infrastructure plan. Now, Karen Bass has released a capital infrastructure plan for the Olympics. Not for Angelenos, for the Olympics, right? And while we do want to have a tourist-friendly city, because we do want to invite our visitors to come and we want to welcome all of our immigrants, which we don't do particularly well here right now in this city or this country, we need to prioritize Angelenos who are living here first. And so one of the things we do not have yet, which I plan on making sure we have, is a capital infrastructure plan, a plan where we know what we want to build so that way we have a sustainable future for all of us well into the future. And it can't be piecemeal. It can't be Band-Aids, for example, a little bit of slurry on a road because it's got a pothole. It has to be a long-term sustainable development. And what that looks like is, for example, making sure that our city becomes greener. We talked actually earlier about public safety. I just got a report from one of my friends who's a doctor who shared the correlation between a tree-lined street and lowered crime. So I'm not saying that trees ultimately always brings down crime, but there is some sort of correlation. And the question was, is this correlation because the city has decided to put resources into the communities, into the neighborhoods itself, which includes providing trees, which makes people feel a lot of times their mental health goes up. A lot of times they feel more secure, right? And so the infrastructure that we want to create is one where we can, for example, be able to ensure that we're going to support our wildlife and ensure that we are moving towards our 100% renewable clean energy goals here in the city by 2035, as well as making sure that we actually are going to be able to make sure our streets are safer and that we have enough homes for everybody. And so if we come up with this plan, in development with all of the county departments, with all of the city departments, with the county supervisors, with the city council members, we can finally end this siloing competitive nature that we have that's running our city and bring us together towards a common future vision for our city to get us to where we need to be. What would that infrastructure include? What would the plan include? One of the things that we should include is social housing. I would consider myself an expert now. My dog agrees. I'm an expert now in social housing because I've been working on this for the last 6 years and longer here in the city, which is permanent affordable housing that is community or publicly owned and also resident managed. That is housing that we can ensure is going to be affordable for the future. We're not going to lose that affordability clause after a certain number of years. We're going to be able to ensure that.
Should we pause and appease the puppy?
Yeah. It's been really well
I like
timed.
a little ambient noise. Yeah, social housing. Ruff, ruff.
Thanks, Echo, for your applause and comment. So one part of the capital infrastructure plan would include social housing, which is permanent affordable housing that is permanently off the speculative market, community owned or publicly owned, and resident managed. And that allows and ensures that we're going to be able to have affordable housing for not just the short term, not a 55-year clause, which is currently what is in the contracts for low-income housing tax credits, but for the long term. This is a very popular system of housing that is around the whole world. We see it in Colombia, we see it in Brazil, we see it in Hong Kong, in Singapore, we see it in Austria, right? And so we can have that here too. How will we fund it? We can fund it through a public bank. A public bank is a bank that we have our city put funds into, and it ensures that we are not losing the fees that oftentimes go into Wall Street banks, and ensures that we can keep that hundreds of millions of dollars and make sure that we're investing and then reinvesting back in the community when we pay off those loans. We can also provide those loans not only to help build our infrastructure, not only build our social housing, we can also ensure that we can support small businesses who need really small loans, or a vendor who needs a micro loan, but they can't get it usually from a private bank because it's such a small loan. The other thing that a public bank can support is also fast and free buses, which is something that we need. We can expand our transit. We can ensure that our buses are free, by the way, not just because of the public bank, but because the cost that we pay to enforce
Fare collection.
fare collection is actually about the same amount of money that we collect in fares. They kind of cancel each other out. So why are we continuing to collect fares? And one of the benefits of fast and free buses for us as we're moving away from car culture is that when you make buses free, we've already seen in research, because we've seen it happen in many cities who have actually made their buses free already, that ridership will increase immediately by 30%. And that's just the start. Then more people will start joining the buses and we'll have less people in cars. So that means safer streets, less people in cars. That means the roads won't be battered down by all the millions of cars that go across it every day. But it also means that our buses will be safer, because a busy bus is a safe bus. A busy train is a safe train. And then another piece of the campaign is also participatory budgeting, right? Which we talked about earlier, which is ensuring that we get to decide where the money should go. And so as we have a public bank to support it, as we have an infrastructure plan, we can also, as a community, participate in co-governance, in naming our values, in naming what we actually want for the city. It's not just about the budget. It's also a way to communicate to all our city leaders and the mayor's office what we want as a community to be able to thrive and make our neighborhoods move towards the green future that we need.
So fast and free buses just popped up. Is this checking in with the table? Is this the time to throw down the gauntlet to do our talked about fast?
I think I would like to wait a little bit to talk about my skepticism about free buses, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I have I have questions, other questions for, like, how common or uncommon is it for a city, especially a city our size, to not have a CIP?
It is not normal, especially being the second largest city in the country. It's a little bit ridiculous that we haven't had a plan and that we're just
winging it.
It's ridiculous.
It's kind of like a laughing stock of other cities. It's just, I don't know. It's like, it's upholding the stereotypes of Angelinos that I don't like. That's one reason to get rid of it. And then what are the forces that are against public banking? Who's pushing back? Because I'm all for public banking, and I just, like, I guess someone must be against it.
I would say that, of course, private corporate banks are not a huge fan of it because now they're seeing competition for their clients. But with public banks, there's a lot of private-public partnerships when we have a public bank. So there's a benefit to a lot of private banks as well in being able to support different kinds of plans and programs and infrastructure goals. I would say that one of the reasons why it's so hard to move ideas like a public bank is because a lot of people don't have a big enough imagination from something that we already have. Systems change is hard for people. For example, car culture, right? Getting people to move out of their cars and into a bus.
Yeah, just the status quo is really durable.
Yeah.
And also everything else is creeping communism. It's like it's the secret. You got to be on guard at all times.
Well, with the public bank, is it its own entity and people's like regular bank routine won't be disturbed, right? Whereas, yeah, exactly.
No,
so it's a lot of times it's like you don't have to make people give up their car to have them do transit. They can do both. Like, there's a way to please everybody.
Exactly.
Because we don't have ranked choice voting, I thought this was relevant because I think that for a lot of people that support you, Nithya would be their second choice. And for a lot of people that support Nithya, you would be their second choice. And certainly on paper, not just on paper, but on paper, you're both Asian American moms who moved here in the 2010s, I believe, who DSA, housing activists. So, I think she benefits. You were in the race. You declared that you entered the race first. She benefits from name recognition and having a track record as a city council person that she can say, I did this and that. So I wanted to give you space to make the case for why someone should choose you instead of Nithya, and maybe to talk about some of the areas where you differ, because there is a lot of overlap between your two platforms.
So a little about me and why I would pitch, I'm the right person for the job, if you will, is that my work has been always focused on coalition building. I have been a strategic consultant for a lot of nonprofits and even public institutions before. And so for me, it's so difficult for me. The saying goes to watch a train slowly crash, or in some cases very quickly crash. That is Kyle. Oh yeah, maybe this is not the right group to make that metaphor.
Watch a car
crash, right?
Collide into a truck, a cyber truck go off a cliff.
For whatever reason, whenever I am trying to take the E line from downtown to Santa Monica to do the Venice Light Parade, it is always blasted by a car, a truck at Expo Western almost every time I'm trying to go.
I was just listening to you talk about that earlier today, in fact.
Which my simple solution for that, I think that we can get agreement for it. Just close the area, the stretch between USC and Expo Park. Just close that to cars.
Yeah,
just have it be trains and pedestrians and bikes.
It'll be fine.
Eric, is that the concession you're demanding? Right
yes, exactly. Whoever does that will get my No.
Well, actually, I do very much believe in closing streets to cars and actually making it pedestrian focused. But anyway, moving forward, I think what sets me apart from other candidates is that I am a coalition builder. And so what I do is I bring people together who oftentimes may not necessarily play well together, who are not used to working together, to be able to come together around a common vision and then move towards that. And so that is the goal of what I plan to do with the city, and then also to have a full-on systems change. What sets me apart is the fact that right now, every other candidate who I've been able to pay attention to their platform is calling for a reform of the current system, or to just maintain the current system if we were to reelect Karen Bass. And one of my colleagues had said this quite well, where it's not that the system is broken, it's that the system is working exactly as it's designed to work. The problem is it's not designed to work to be able to support working families here in Los Angeles. And so I really am working to change and challenge that system. And that's why my system includes a public bank, moving away from the only option being a private bank, moving away from the idea that housing is only meant for profit. I want to challenge that and say housing should be a human right, a basic human right, and that homes are for people, not for profit, to, again, challenge and make transit actually affordable for everybody by making it free. I'm going to start with buses, but I want to also expand that. And the thing is, we know that these are ways that can make our city more affordable. And the honest truth is a more affordable city is a healthier city. A more affordable city is actually a safer city because people have the resources they need. They don't turn to crisis as often. And when they are in crisis, we can actually ensure that we have the resources to support them while they're in crisis so they can get what they need so they can continue to thrive and progress and get healthy.
I think the idea of bringing together people who wouldn't normally interact together is so beautiful in all the stuff that you're doing. Because for me, like the beauty of living in Los Angeles is that there are so many different types of people from all different walks of life. And I love getting to meet new people. Like people who know me know that I love like small worlds and small world coincidences and like people who know each other. And like I love that stuff. And like for me, I think because I'm not, tied to my car, I love transit, getting around, walking, going to different neighborhoods. Like that's how I'm able to meet different people like you all. Like I feel like a lot of people I know they say they love LA and they claim that, I love LA, but like you're just like stuck in your same neighborhood, hang out with the same people all the time. But like getting around and like knowing your community is so beautiful. And I think it's great that you promote that and promoting people getting together and doing good work together too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why my favorite part of the platform actually, because it's the center of it all that brings it all together, is the fast and free buses. Because like you just said, transit is that place where people who normally don't collide can collide. It's a third space for our city. And so we need to create more spaces like that. Another space that I'm doing that is that participatory budgeting process, is the idea of co-governance. The other thing I would also add that sets me apart from others is that most people who run for office, they want to run a government where nobody pays attention to the government, where the government works silently in the background and you don't even realize it's there. I actually believe in the opposite because I am a community organizer. I believe that we need to give people the tools and the confidence to know that they can participate and change the city that they have, the neighborhoods they have, to make it better suited for the needs of their particular families and individuals. And that's why participatory budgeting is one of those steps. The idea of a people's assembly, the idea that people can have civic engagement and participate and shape their own interests and ensure that they're being heard, I think is an essential part to making sure that government is working effectively.
So how would a participatory budget work mechanically? Like if you're a person who wants to participate, how might you participate?
And maybe because I think it's sort of related, maybe you can talk, because this is also one of the areas that differentiates you from the other candidates, as far as I know, is your ideas about Metro Board composition. Because right now that's not an open process where, people participate. I mean, we can go to meetings.
Yeah, exactly. So just to finish talking about the participatory budgeting process, so I'll tell you right now, the People's Budget LA survey that we do every year is an online survey that people can take, and they vote on the various things that they feel like are essential to them, are areas that they want to prioritize in terms of our city budget. And then based on that, we're able to see where people's values and people's priorities lie. We can do that same process through the city, but make sure that it's actually going to be accessible to everybody. So again, one of the things we're really bad at in the city is language justice. We do not, for example, provide the city council meetings in any other language but in English. This is a ridiculous situation when we know the vast majority of Los Angeles speaks in multitudes of languages. And so we need to ensure that there's accessibility in our city and leadership and governance for every single Angelino. So the participatory budgeting process needs to go to their own neighborhoods. And so one of the things that I feel like is a lack in is that we set up neighborhood city councils during the last charter reform process. Those neighborhood councils have been defunded over the last number of years. They've been completely under-resourced, and they have absolutely zero power.
And almost no participation.
And there's so little participation because they are so little resourced, right?
I mean, I'm someone I was elected to it. I think I got like 200 or something votes, and that made me which was more than like anyone else running for a not at large seat in my neighborhood, but of 44,000 people. Exactly. But there are other neighborhoods, I mean, where I've seen people who are elected with 3 to 5 votes and like. Yeah. And people don't even know that it exists. The whole point, it's 26 years old, I think, now, the neighborhood council system. It was created expressly to increase democratic engagement. So I'm like, How do we hold the city accountable to say, like, how do you think you're doing on that? Because
Yeah.
They used to give $50,000 as an annual budget, which back then had a buying power of like $90,000. Now they give them 32. So I'm like, how is this working towards your aim of increasing Democratic engagement? You know?
Case in point right there. So that's the kind of that's an example of where we need to be putting our resources and the location by which we can encourage democratic co-governance in the city is by utilizing the systems and infrastructure we have. Honestly, I'm just offering up to the city things that we already have said we wanted, but that we have not actually followed through with. So now to move to then the Metro Board. Yeah. The people on the Metro Board are people who don't ride the Metro.
Some of them, I think, are hostile to Metro on the board, you know?
That's why earlier...
Actively
hostile. I think some of them feel like their job is to keep it in check. And also, we know that Metro does things that we don't necessarily like spend a vast amount of its budget on widening roads.
Yeah. I think, Rae, earlier when you were saying, like, having an elected official who represents the community, I feel represented because you take transit, you know, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. We need more of that.
Yeah, and I guess too, talking about the Metro Board, the recent drama around the K-Line North extension. Yeah. Whereas that, and I'm gonna butcher explaining this, so if someone would like to fact check me, but like the gist of it is the K-Line North extension, which is, you know, set to go generally up from the current Expo Crenshaw station north up into Hollywood, possibly to the Hollywood Bowl, that selecting the alternative to get that way and the alignment of the line was delayed because one of the Metro Board members owns property, a mansion, in the route of this line and essentially just kept on rejecting Metro's studies, right?
Yeah, I believe it was in Lemert Park, if I'm remembering correctly. Sorry, Lafayette Park. Sorry. It's one of Mayor Bass's appointees in particular, not just any board member. It was one of Mayor Bass's appointees. But just watching that unfold was painful.
To me, it seems to come down to you're appointing people to the board who don't use trains and buses and don't like them, and then they don't recuse themselves from the, you know, or at least they actively lobby against things and then maybe recuse themselves in them. And, you know, it's just like the whole process of it just seems very sus.
Yeah, and it's exhausting when we're having to watch elected officials constantly recuse themselves from certain votes. I could name names. One of them is currently running for mayor, I believe. But
well, I feel like it's kind of what, like when you're on jury duty and they're like strike that from the record, forget what you just heard about, you know, and you're like, how can I like forget it? Like you can't.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to mention is the fact that this city historically has been okay with using eminent domain to build highways through low-income neighborhoods with no second question about what that's going to do to the community and ensuring that people who are getting displaced are going to be, you know, housed. But then when we have a K-Line North, route to ensure that working families and people can get to their jobs and not have to add to traffic because they're sitting hours and hours in their cars, but it can actually take a simple train up to where they need to go to work, but it goes through a wealthy neighborhood. All of a sudden, that's not an option. I mean, we need to talk about the reality of the fact that our city time and time again prioritizes, again, what we talked about earlier. They prioritize the rich. They prioritize those in power. They prioritize the 0.1% over the other 99.9% of our city. And that's the dilemma. That's the dynamic. That's the system that we need to challenge.
One of the points where you differ with Nithya is on red light camera enforcement. Mm-hmm. I kind of like that we don't talk about stuff beforehand so we don't know what all of our opinions are, because most of the podcasts I listen to, if there's 5 hosts, they're in agreement 100% of the time. And I'm like, they clearly like had a run through where they talked about this. But I like that it's like, I don't know, I welcome disagreement as long as it's in good faith, you know? Mm-hmm. But you're opposed to red light camera enforcement, right? And I think it's fair to say a lot of people in the transit activist community are probably in support of red light cameras. So I'd like you to make your case about why you are against that.
Yeah, I'm against it because right now we have way too much surveillance that is not being used for the protection of people. We have the flock cameras that are everywhere, and we know that ICE has been using it to be able to identify undocumented residents of ours and be able to detain them. We know that, for example, a Texas sheriff used the flock camera to identify somebody who had gone across the border to be able to get an abortion, right? So the amount of surveillance that is blossoming everywhere is a threat to, honestly, our livelihood here in the US. And so we need to be very, very careful about how we use and when we use cameras. And I understand that the idea is to be able to keep cars more accountable by ensuring that they'll slow down and things like that. But you have to remember, we oftentimes will talk about the fact that it doesn't prevent an accident because the problem is the accident's already occurred. You've just taken a picture of the car that's done it. And now you have an identification of when people have traveled and where. And this is a problem in our current society as it is. What we should in fact be doing, and by the way, I actually was on the Committee for Traffic Enforcement Alternatives. It's such a long name. It always takes me forever to remember that. And what we decided, and we had a debate about this actually, but together, the major issue that we talked about was the fact that it's not that the cameras will prevent people, and we had disagreement on that committee, by the way, around this, so don't get me wrong. But what we had, I think at the end concluded, was that ultimately we need to design the streets so that it's safer. Right. And that means, for example, directing traffic in different directions. For example, using traffic circles, right? For example, using the bumps, right? Like there are very smart ways to ensure that we are slowing cars down, that we are preventing traffic collisions, and ensuring that we're prioritizing pedestrians, cyclists, and other forms of alternatives of transit that are safer for everybody, so that we shift away from this car-centric culture that we currently have in LA that's taken root. There is a way to change it. And that's, by the way, my last thing I'll just talk about is that we need to grow our imagination. We need to grow our imagination about what safety can look like, our imagination about transit and how we can get around. And we need to grow our imagination about the role of the police in society.
Well, I think we all have the same goal. We all want fewer collisions, fewer deaths, fewer accidents in inverted quotes. But I think it's almost like reactionary sometimes. It's like, let's get them. Like, I just want to see more tickets issued to car owners, But then, like you said, well, and what I always point out to people, because I have a troll in my life at my work who I get to bounce arguments off of. And so, I ride my bike to and from work, and he's like, did you roll through a stop sign? I'm like, have you ever driven over the speed limit? Have you ever exceeded the speed limit? And of course he has, because at the end of the day, every single person goes over the speed limit every single time they get in a car, unless there's something because everyone drives as fast as they feel comfortable driving. They're not constantly checking their speedometer. Yeah. And so there are different ways of so not having to have enforcement all the time, of having sidewalk bulb outs and narrower streets and protected bikeways where the cars are on the inside, and then trees make people drive slower. And so and it's those kind of things where you just think there are all these ways to make people naturally kind of slow down that are not just about that. And I'm not opposed. Honestly, I get it, because I'm when the buses are issuing all these tickets to cars parked in bike lanes and stuff. But I'm also a delivery person, and I sometimes park I almost every time park illegally, because there's nowhere legal to park that is an option, because we refuse to reorganize our curb to reflect the reality that deliveries are a huge thing now. And maybe we don't need spots for cars to be for 72 hours along every inch of every block. And I don't know.
Eric, are you the delivery person that is constantly plugging up my bike lane at 7th and L?
I won't park in a bike lane. I will park in the middle of the car lane and be like, you can go around me. So, and also luckily there aren't enough bike lanes for it to be an issue with me. So I don't normally have to park in bike lanes because there aren't enough. But I will just say we have, one of the things that's on my mind all the time is that we have a pedestrian plaza in Silver Lake. It's our only pedestrian plaza in the community. And there are always cars parked on top of it, and there are always scooters parked on top of it, and delivery people just hanging out smoking and waiting for gigs. And I get it, it's a job of sorts. When I brought it up to the neighborhood council over and over, the city council response, CD13 in this case, is always like, we'll do more enforcement. We'll do more enforcement. I'm saying, like, I don't want more enforcement. I want you to just put like a boulder there so that they can't drive onto the pedestrian plaza. Then you don't have to enforce it. You don't have to send anyone out, and it doesn't cost anything ever again. The boulder just stays there.
And that is such a good example of what I am trying to convey, is that if we want to change the way and the nature by which we drive around and feel like we own the road in our tiny little metal vehicle that can kill a lot of people and a lot of animals, giving out tickets is not going to necessarily change that. But if you design the road to function differently, you have no choice but to function differently in it. If you actually create more spaces for buses and for bikes, people will shift into, they'll grumble, don't get me wrong, they'll be super annoyed at first, but then when they start a new habit of taking the bus and they realize, oh, I can actually listen to a podcast and I can actually read a book and I actually can get some work done or make a phone call to a friend safely. And
I was going to say, people do that in cars already.
I was thinking that I was saying that. But in a safe, less stressful way, right? Or take the bike and realize that when you get to work or you get to your kid's school that you feel actually a little lighter because you've now been able to enjoy some fresh air, right? It changes it. And then here's the other thing I do have to mention. This is really important that people don't talk about. The reason why the Committee for Alternatives to Traffic Enforcement was so important, for the conversations we had were important, was because a good majority of us were people of color. A good majority of us were representing communities who were oftentimes not making as much money and were workers, essential workers here in the city of LA. And the thing is, it's the poor people who get the traffic tickets the most. And they cannot afford every single one of those traffic tickets. When they get, another parking violation, because they're sleeping in their car because they have no option of where else to live and they overstayed. And now they have that parking violation and then they got another parking violation and another, then their car is towed. Now they're on the streets. This is such a common story. The citations, their parking tickets, that style of enforcement is not a benefit to the majority of Angelenos. They've been given no other alternatives. And it's causing unaffordability on another different kind of level. And so we have to be honest with ourselves about, well, if we want to make our streets safer, how can we do it in a way that actually ensures safety for everybody? And I want to state again, affordability is actually is a safer city. Affordability actually means we have a healthier city. And so these all things coalesce. They all interconnect.
I work in Silver Lake, but I've had coworkers that live in Watts that live far away, and it's like for this minimum wage job, and like you have to drive. If you don't have affordable, this is why I always say transit is at the intersection of everything, because especially with housing and stuff, it's like if you don't have anywhere to live in your neighborhood. I saw this firsthand when I went to Santa Barbara the first time. I was like, wow, beautiful, charming city, with just lines of traffic of people that can't afford to live here, that come in to do their jobs in retail and service and then drive all the way home. And it's like, well, this is another bugbear. Like in that case, it's like weaponized environmentalism. It's like, no, see, we're being environmental. Look how green. Everyone has like green around their lawns and there's no density. And they're like, how is this better for the planet? Having just pushing everyone out, making them drive.
Eric, that brings up for me a bit of a text discussion we were having last night. Also segs into a discussion that I'd like to bump set for Gabby. But one of the groups that I volunteer with, I've noticed that on some of the stances they post on their Instagram posts about the bills that they support and the measures that they support or oppose tend to have a little bit of I've been noticing a flare of NIMBYism to them, like opposing redeveloping parking lots, giant parking lots at the beach, because then people inland can't park to get to the beach.
Well, I saw you commented recently on the opposition of Friends of Elysian Park to having bus lanes on Sunset Boulevard because they're like, this is going to make it upgraded for SB79 and it's going to usher in the gondola. And I'm like,
I was very mad.
I ride my bike on Sunset Boulevard to get to and from work, and I've been hit 3 times. Like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to fucking buy a car to get to work in one goddamn piece.
I don't comment or interact online often at all, which is funny that I, do a lot of our editing and our reels and stuff like that, but I don't actually post as myself much. But
all the trolling is me, by the way.
yeah.
I call it trolling for good, though.
I can tell.
Yeah, I think
grammar. I think too many commas.
I think I responded to that post, or you could get out of your stupid car and take the bus. And I was very mad about that, but people liked it.
Well,
so
they were getting dragged in the comments on that because
yeah. So I've noticed that with this group posting things that I'm only now being aware of actually this is like veiled NIMBYism and is actually not good for the environment. And think of all of the people too who love the ocean and who can't participate, who can't volunteer, who can't surf because you can't take an 8-foot surfboard on the bus. You don't have a reasonable way to take transit from where you live inland. So for me, that turns up that, I've had a strong feeling for a long time that I want to do some good with the time that I have available to give. And Los Angeles has been such a great place for me in that regard because there are whatever you are interested in. There's someone somewhere that you can link up with and get involved with, whatever it is. Volunteerism, people here are passionate and people want to give their time to something. So Gabby, you mentioned before when we were in between. Here, I got to it. Hooray! We were talking about this before on a little bit of an intermission, though, about how a lot of your campaign is collaborative and is, I guess, sort of co-created with your volunteers, with your staff, with the people that you are marching with. So perhaps you could talk a little bit about how you and this campaign interacts with your volunteers and people who get involved with what you're doing and what you are trying to achieve.
Yeah, I think it's been so interesting and really just genuinely inspiring. Like, not only how engaged Angelinos are right now in wanting to do things to make this city better for all of us, as we are living under fascism, as we are in forever wars, just the energy that people have. And I've seen it, all over the city, not just in our campaign, but our campaign certainly is one of the biggest places that I have personally engaged with it. And this is the most campaign work I've ever personally done, but I've been told that this is a very unique campaign and that other campaigns are not typically run this way, particularly in Los Angeles. But as Rae was saying earlier, our campaign is incredibly collaborative. And I credit Rae for that and for empowering volunteers to do things like write policy. Like you brought up the Metro board earlier. I had an idea that we should be putting transit riders and people who understand public transit on our Metro board after, perhaps looking at who Mayor Bass had appointed, who she had chosen. It's,
you would think people would understand.
I was like, that is not who I would put on the Metro board if I was going to do that. And I brought it up with one of our policy directors, and she came back to me later on saying, I think we should put this in as a policy. And we submitted it as a policy. Rae made a video about it. It's part of our platform. And I'm not unique in that. And since I volunteered my way into a job on Rae's campaign. I'm, again, not the only person who has done that, but I've gotten to see so much of how our volunteers are engaged. Like our field team just launched their community captains program. We have volunteers who are out leading canvases now who have some of them, it was their first time canvassing, and now they're literally leading canvases. We're training up leaders on the campaign. We have volunteers who are writing videos, filming videos, editing videos. We have volunteers in every little aspect of our campaign. And it's been so inspiring to see like what that does for your engagement. Like so many of the pro Rae comments that you'll see online are volunteers who are just so excited about Rae, and they're not sent into the comments. They do it out of love for the game, like, and love for Rae and what she stands for. And it's been incredible to watch. And one of the things that I know Rae really values is building for the long term with all of the work that we're doing now. Like whether or not she ends up in City Hall in 2027, like are the people that she's training up now as leaders, she wants to keep encouraging them and keep giving them, more power, enabling them to be the future leaders of our city, whether that's in elected office or not. It's been so fascinating to watch, and just very, I know I keep saying it, but inspiring. It really has.
That's so moving.
It's funny because that reminded me of two polls. There was the LA Times one that had you in the lead among, I think, 18 to 26-year-olds, which I felt like was 29, which is a story that was not getting told.
Yeah.
And the other one was, it was maybe a more bizarre poll, the Loyola Marymount one, but it was interesting because it was like 300 something people surveyed, and then it had you at 16.9% and Mayor Bassett 17. And I was like, 0.1% of 300, that means that half a person more voted for
It might have been 16.6% or something. I remember that if you rounded,
it's very precise. Yeah,
I remember if you rounded, they were both 17%.
Especially considering the margin of error is usually 3%. But I just thought, that's like a kind of creative way of saying like, and then Mayor Bassett in second. Anyway, but I also wanted to just like insert maybe back in because one of the things about the red light cameras is I was like, well, surely there has to be a way where we can safeguard and say that they don't share that data with ICE and Border Patrol, which I believe is enshrined in state law, but then they just violated it.
Yes.
Well, yeah, Flock says that they won't share data, right? But they have.
And so I think that is something that is relevant to people that are, transit activists who are like, yeah, but they're not but they do share it.
When Trump's Olympics come to town, they will have control over our LAPD. They will have access to our information. And so this is a reality that we have not been talking about, is the fact that Trump's Olympics are coming to town. We talk so much about preparing our infrastructure ready for the Olympics. We're not talking about the protections that we need to prepare for the Olympics. And protections on multiple sides, on the side of housing, in that we have seen over and over again historically that every single Olympics that goes to any city, whether it's Trump's, country or not at that point, people are displaced, are unhoused, are bussed out of the city. And who knows where they end up, right? This is completely destabilizing a community that's already been destabilized. One professor at UCLA, Ananya Roy, often talks about it's not displacement of unhoused, it's banishment of a certain kind of individual because they're poor. What I often argue is that we need to fight the system of poverty, not fight the poor.
Right. Because there is a totally false idea that homeless people are all from somewhere else and they came here to get services, which, by the way, didn't everyone that came to Los Angeles come here to have a better life? Like, you're only allowed to pursue that if you can afford a house, No, but anyway, but what I have seen is, and it's a statistic that I do not see anyone ever share, is that unhoused people in Los Angeles are twice as likely to be from the neighborhood in which they live as people that are housed. And those two things are tied together. And that's another one of those things that when I bring that statistic up to people, they're like, there's no way that's possible. I'm like, were you born in the neighborhood you live in? Because I wasn't, and I don't know very many people that live in the neighborhood. And I'm not saying you should have to live in the neighborhood you lived in when you were born, because that would mean me going back to this area of Iowa City that I lived in for 1 week as a newborn, and like I couldn't afford to live there. They call it the academic ghetto. It's where all the professors live and stuff. So I think people should be able to live where they want and to pursue whatever they think will make their life better. But also, those people are and people become homeless usually. Either they're fleeing a domestic situation, which, they're victims, or their rent goes up faster than their wages. And then I don't know. I volunteered with homeless stuff through SELA a lot, and I've only ever met one person who's just outspokenly like, no, I just don't want to work, and I just don't like you. And I've been like volunteering with homeless stuff since I was like 8 years old. So, and I'm old, so I don't know. You just aren't meeting these people all the time who are service resistant and don't want to live in houses under any circumstances and all this other stuff. It's like, these are mythical people that you're making up. Anyway, yeah. Oh, and my other thing was, I was just going to say that if we rely on cops solely for enforcement, the cops are the most car-brained people in the city. 100%. And I saw too, they're very selective about what they enforce. I've had them pull me over and then tell me that, oh, we chose not to do that or to enforce this or not enforce that because it's up to us. And when I did have a car, because they pulled me over, and then they were like, do you know why we pulled you over? And I said, I can't wait to hear. And then the cop walked around for a while and was like, your windows are too dark. And I was like, but that's how they were when I got it. And then when they made me take out the tinting and then show them at the highway patrol office, and I was like, every car in the employee lot has tinted windows. They're like, well, that's us. We can do whatever. But I saw the other day, I saw 2 cops in it, like both cops were on their phones sitting on Sunset Boulevard, and the light turned green, and they're just like texting and scrolling away, and no one wants to honk because they're like maybe what they're doing is important, but they can't see them from the sidewalk. I'm like, no, they're just like giggling and looking at Instagram and TikTok.
They're the reason that Sunset Boulevard doesn't move during rush hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just replace them with a bus. Anyway.
I just put out this video that Gabby mentioned earlier and calling LAPD a gang. And historically, LAPD has been known to be extraordinarily racist, extraordinarily classist, sexist, and, homophobic. This is the reality of a culture around a organization that has so much power, and they want to retain that power. But we have to ask the question, then who do they serve? Is it the people of Los Angeles? Just a couple weeks ago, I had a conversation with a victim of sexual assault or where she was at a protest on the No Kings Day protest, where she was wearing whatever outfit she was. And the police said, I'm going to arrest you, but if you go basically lean over on this car in a seductive manner for me and let me take photos, then I'll let you go free. This is the reality of our LAPD. I'm not saying every single officer does this, but I am saying, where is the accountability of officers who do this? I'm asking the question of who do they serve and who are they protecting? We know now of an incident where the police were assaulting teenagers who are out of school because they were protesting ICE. What a beautiful show of the freedom of speech, to be able to stand up for their friends and their neighbors and their family members right now. And yet the police saw them as perpetrators of the law. Who are they protecting, right? That's the question here. So anyway, I'm kind of divulging into a conversation about the police, and I know we want to kind of stick around transit a little bit, but I do think it's a point for us to really seriously consider, is really talking seriously about the role of the police in this city and around the fact that they have been a protected class, and the question of what we need to grow our imagination to see an alternative where the people of Los Angeles are actually being served, where the people of Los Angeles are actually being protected, where the people of Los Angeles are actually feeling safe in their own neighborhoods.
I do remind people that are like very pro-police that I'm like, we didn't always have police. We did have something before. We had soldiers and dungeons. It was worse, but we're moving but the idea is that we're moving forward, right? Like, exactly. Police are better than soldiers just randomly, or like chopping off hands and then releasing you back into the population. That's what the whole eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth is about. It's like, well, we don't have criminal courts, so we'll just chop something off and like send you back and, out there. Police were better than that. but now we need to move maybe like to the next step. You don't have to have that much imagination to reimagine public safety. And then, like you said, you hinted at it earlier, when crime drops and the police budget goes up, they're like, see, it's working. But then when crime goes up, the police budget goes up and they're like, we need more. It's like, we just always need more, and it's like, I'd say jokingly, of course, but let's just give the police the entire budget for 1 year and be like, finish your job. Mission accomplished. We're going to declare that end crime once and for all. And then we'll split up everything and you'll be gone.
By the way, which is going to happen when Trump's Olympics come. You have to remember that we've seen the Marines here, right? We've seen the National Guard here. Before the Olympics come, in the manner by which we've been seeing things happen by Trump's administration, expect that our immigrants and that our unhoused are going to be even further unsafe as we're leading into that moment if we do not begin to set the boundary here in this city about what it means to actually protect and serve our people. And I love what you were saying in terms of growing our imagination. We can see an alternative. And what I want to name clearly to every listener is that I am not proposing what needs to happen. I am inviting Los Angeles to come together to say, what should we propose that can work for us where we can actually feel safe? And I'll give you a model for us to think about. We've already seen the success of the unarmed crisis response program that we've had successfully here that City Council recently decided to make permanent. Karen Bass has said that she wants to expand the program, but she's increased the police budget and has only very slightly increased that budget. So I don't really see how it's going to expand citywide. But that is a model for us to consider. I'll give you another model. Camden, New Jersey. Actually, because there was so much corruption in their police force and because their police lobby had so much power, they decided to actually get rid of their police department and rehire in their sheriff's department and focus on community policing. Now, if you talk to other people, other Angelenos, particularly, comrades of the Black Lives Matter LA, they'll say they want to abolish police collectively. And I actually agree with that. We need to see an alternative. So I don't know how we feel about that idea and that concept of community policing, but I'll say what I do know is that what is working right now is not working. And so I am opening the door to say, okay, well, what else can we do better? I'm not saying I know, I'm saying we will know if we come together and imagine something greater.
I want us to imagine something besides a different version of the Olympics personally, because I'm like, I like the idea of the world coming to Los Angeles. I like the idea of 20 by 28. We're going to fast track all these transit things. Like the Olympics, it's not part of it's named after a thing that happened thousands of years ago, but this is a modern, super corrupt company. It's like FIFA. I love soccer, so I want soccer, but also FIFA. I don't know, but I think it'd be even harder to oppose FIFA.
The People's Olympic Games.
But no, exactly a Los Angeles Games where it's we invite people, and it could be very Los Angeles focused, like skating and surfing and rock climbing and one wheeling.
When you say that, the thought of, I feel like the historic state park in Chinatown, it would be great to have a discus throwing match down there, especially if the gondola gets built. So if you hit the gondola, you get bonus points. Let's talk about the Olympics, lack of Olympics budget to start next round.
Yes. So we know that the budget for the city to understand what we're on the hook for has been delayed now by over 6 months. And we're still waiting. And so it is so difficult for us as Angelenos to be able to trust that the Olympics are actually good for us. We've also seen in the news, for example, that the Olympic Committee has stated that they're not going to prioritize companies and contracts with local small businesses here in LA, that they want to open it up outside of LA.
They want to extend local to 7 counties or something because Los Angeles isn't competitive because we're too high priced. It's because our property is high. It's in the city.
Yeah, and we want to pay, good wages.
Exactly. At least minimum wage, yeah.
So to what benefit? And then we know the tickets are so costly right now that even I my brother was like, Rae, please get tickets for us. And then I was like, okay, my neighbor has some extra tickets. Can you pay the $300, $400 for each ticket? And he's like, I guess we're not coming.
No, it'd be cheaper to just fly to another country and watch a sporting event than you get a vacation in.
Exactly. So the question I have that I really want to pose for us as Angelenos and to City Hall is, in what regard is the Olympics actually for us in this moment? And how are you going to actually guarantee that we're not going to be on the hook for all of the money and be in debt because of bad decision making in the past? Are the Olympics for us? I think the answer right now is no. So what does that mean? We should be asking these and requiring our city leaders to be answering these difficult questions and ensuring that they have a plan and a process by which they're going to get these answers to these questions so that we can actually, as Angelenos, make a definitive answer for ourselves whether or not these Olympics are good for us, and whether or not we should have it even, and whether or not this is, if we're going to be protected through this process, because we know this is not just any old Olympics. We know this is Trump's Olympics. There is a far more insidious kind of situation around us right now, and we know that displacement and banishment is going to happen. So how are we going to protect that? And then on top of that, how are we going to ensure that our community is not going to be even further threatened?
I feel like we make plans that we want and then don't carry through. And then the other way is politicians here will make plans that will take place once they're termed out and have
Exactly.
become ambassador to India. And it's
Oh my gosh. Yeah, good luck.
You're on your own.
Speaking of that, I remember, this may have been a year, and again, I'm kind of loose on the details, but the gist of it from what I remember is the city of Santa Monica made some waves when they decided to not host Olympic Games inside Santa Monica. I think they were going to host, surfing and volleyball, and the city found out they, I guess ran some numbers or something happened at a
now we're good.
meeting. Yeah. Where they're like, no, we are going to lose a lot of money.
We love that for you. But so maybe we could talk about transit fare-free skepticism right now so that we can at least get to that. So I guess my thing is, I think initially I was like, oh yeah, that sounds good, free transit, but I've become more skeptical, and part of that is because, I would say initially I became more skeptical because I feel like we run so many public goods on an austerity budget, and like anything we can use as an excuse to underfund stuff, we will. And that if we're like, sorry, everything's free now, it's like, well, kiss goodbye, like the idea of having activated stations, or because it just becomes more, it's like public transit becomes just a charity and no longer, it's like just a safety net, and it's just for the people that really have no other options. I mean, Noreen Martinez once, when I went to a meeting that she didn't allow me to speak to, even though I'd been there for like 4 hours and registered to speak, I remember she was like framing it as like, she was like, I don't need to hear from you. My dad took transit because he couldn't afford a car. And I'm like, well, I can't afford a car, but I also don't want one. And and you shouldn't have, and a car costs $14,000 a year, according to AAA, to own and operate and maintain in Los Angeles. That's $36 a day. That's too high of a barrier. That should not be a barrier to being able to participate meaningfully in your city. But then I also feel like with a LIFE program, it's like $1 and change a day for public transit. So that's another, you can frame this to make it sound less rambling. And that's another one of my criticisms, is that I saw multiple studies that said that free transit does make more people take the bus and train, but it does so not by pulling anybody from their cars. It pulls them from bikes and pedestrian trips. And that actually makes streets less safe. It makes us less healthy as a people because we're getting less exercise, and people that use active transportation pay 22% less in healthcare. So, because I don't really understand why someone would say, I can't afford to take the bus or the train because it costs me $1 a day, so I'll just drive my car that costs me $36 a day. So that's one of my fears. And then there's also that, according to a Metro study, 96% of the violent crimes committed on Metro are by people who didn't pay fare, and that 85% of transit riders say that safety is their main concern. And free fare does not go into the top 5 for either bus riders or train riders for what they want, what they say that they want Metro to prioritize. And I think that all of us, whether we think free or not free, want faster buses, dedicated bus lanes, things like that. Like that, I really wish that's where we were. I mean, I like because buses. Well, I also feel like bus lanes don't get the same bike-lash, the same backlash as bikes. Like, I just don't understand like why we aren't like pushing bus lanes everywhere, because that's like the main thing that speeds them up. And we hit so many green lights. That's why I got over here so quickly on the E-line today. And I was like, it shouldn't even be an issue. I'm on a train. Why are we stopping at lights? Signal preemption, like such simple things that I just feel like I want like top class public goods. And I just want to, and I don't mind like paying a little bit for them. I just want to be paid more. I want to be paid for my work so that I can pay for things instead of, I feel like when everything gets cut down cheaper and cheaper, there's just always that danger of like, well, we can't afford to have Dunkin' Donuts in this station because we just don't, it costs too much money to pay a janitor and we don't make any money anymore. Kansas City, the first big city, I'm from Missouri. It's a big city if you're from Missouri. It's the biggest city in Missouri. They had a free transit program. They were the biggest city to have one. They're ending it in June because they're facing a $30 million budget shortfall. And that's because they were relying on COVID money from the government. A new regime came in who's like super anti anything, public benefiting. So I worry that that's a lot.
Yeah, you did your homework, I have to say, around this. I said this actually earlier in this podcast, which is the cost of collecting fares is about the same amount of money that we are actually collecting in fares right now. So it does cancel each other out. The majority of our metro is actually already in transit, already paid for by other subsidies, by other revenue measures. It's actually easier in a lot of ways to be able to have free transit here in LA than it is in New York City. Now, you talked about wanting to not have to worry about that you are willing to pay money to ensure that you could continue to have transit accessibility and that you could expand transit. Because the cost, it doesn't require really much out of the city to change it and make it free. It doesn't make sense for us to just continue to spend all that money for fare collection, on the enforcement of fare collection. In particular, because a lot of that money is actually going towards paying for programs to make it cheaper for people to be able to ride transit. And those programs have been unsuccessful. They're paying millions of dollars to be able to market this program. The Life program.
Could we simplify that by like auto-enrolling EBT holders and making them automatically like life card holders, something like that?
I mean, but it all requires administration to be able to dole out and create that program and then market it and get all the information out. One of the challenges, too, is that a lot of people who are taking transit actually don't necessarily have the type of ID they need, the Social Security card, the other kinds of ID, to be able to get their card. And then if they forget their card at home, they can't ride the bus. And when you talk to bus drivers...
This is true.
They will tell you that the majority of the time that there is some kind of altercation.
The majority, like 85% of bus drivers support free fare because that they feel like most of the altercations are between them and people who get on who there's an issue about them paying fare. But I would I would counter it with that. I don't want people that are that close to violence getting on the bus with me. And I've had some hairy bus rides lately. I had a guy get on the other day. I thought he was blind and I was going to help him. And then I realized he was drooling and he was like feeling around because he couldn't see the walls of the bus. And then he asked the driver, like, can you let me off? And he like ran across the street with his hands out. And I was like, oh my God, I had a Rottweiler on the bus. I told this story. A man put his hand on one of his shoulder.
Did the Rottweiler pay his fare?
The Rottweiler was the best behaved rider on the bus, I have to say. But some people are scared of dogs. And I think that, there should be a dog bus. Oh, they have like
free buses. Cat bus. Oh my gosh. Sorry, I'm a huge Totoro fan. So I would love a cat bus. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think that would just fix all of LA.
I do honestly think about stuff like that sometimes when I'm like, how am I supposed to, because, okay, Alan, I'm not body shaming my cat. He's lost a pound. He's like 23 and a half pounds. He's a very large cat and carrying him in a carrying case is really hard. And I'm like, how would and he also has a lot of health issues. I'm like, oh my God, it's so hard to get an animal to the vet without a car. Because I know that I can't take him on the bus and I'm not supposed to, and that people are allergic to cats. I want to respect that. Anyway, sorry. I don't want to get too far.
Okay, so let me counter you right now. Yeah. Because what you're talking about is there's a fear of having, if you will, the majority of people who are poorer and maybe struggle with mental illness or whatever getting on the bus. We want to be able to if you will, deter them from getting on the bus with us. But this is kind of a problem, right? Like, we actually want to make sure that transit is also a public good, that people can get around and get to the resources they need so they can treat the situation they have, so they can get the medicine that they need, so they can get to their recovery programs and support, to get to their community who makes them feel safe and supported, to help them be able to stay stabilized. Like I have been saying before, affordability means healthy. Affordability means safety. So we need to ensure that we actually provide a resource for people to get what they need. And we also don't want to prevent a public good from being provided to people just because of their class or because of their mental health history, right? And so this shift is that it's not that we're no longer going to, what's the term? Conflate. A lot of people will conflate fair enforcement with having police to ensure safety on buses. What I am saying is that the amount of money that we're paying LAPD, and we've talked about the LAPD and what they do.
I think we all probably agree on, like, because we're all huge transit ambassador supporters, and you get so much more bang for your buck with transit ambassadors.
Exactly.
There are a lot of people in my experience who are like, no, you have to have like armed officers for everything. And those are people that, someone else coined this term, metro-splaining. It's like people that don't take the train telling you what needs to be done on it, And I'm like, I don't super value those people's opinions. Well, I get it, but...
Yeah, so what if we were to put, instead of putting money into fair enforcement, we put money into traffic ambassadors. So that way, as people are struggling through their everyday lives, there's somebody there to help support them in a crisis, to de-escalate a situation, to ensure that the people... And let me be honest, the reason why you see so many unhoused residents oftentimes using transit is because it's one of the few third spaces, public spaces left. I will give you a story. A couple weeks ago, I was at the Black Women Are Divine event down in South LA. And one of the women who came to the event, she came with her friend. She came over to me and said, I took 3 buses to get to this event from Skid Row, because the train stopped working, and so my only alternative was this. And while I was on the train, or when I was walking or whatever, her stuff was stolen. And she lost her bus pass, she lost her identification, and she wasn't sure how she was going to get home, right? And her home was Skid Row. And she came to this event because it was providing free food. It was providing actually free massages. It was providing, a safe place for Black women to feel supported in this kind of season, if you will, where we continue to not actually value, in particular, our Black women in our communities. And so she came out here, and now she couldn't get back home. And so she had to get a specific bus pass to be able to come here, and that bus pass gave her free rides, but only for a certain number. My point is, if we had trains, or buses, I should say, because immediately I can be able to make buses free, because I'd be able to appoint people on the Metro board that agree with me, and we'd be able to vote and move in that direction.
And LADOT you could do much, much more easily.
Yeah. If we made buses free, it would allow people to be able to get from place to place. And by the way, we already know this for you who use transit, right? The buses were free during the pandemic. So we've done this before. So it's not like it's a new concept, right? So if you made it free, people would be able to access the resources. They'd be able to get their help. We'd have traffic ambassadors being able to support people who are using the transit. And because like I said, the money situation is not the concern here, then we can actually be able to provide it pretty easily. I know, and I heard your question around, well, what happens if the federal government or the state, revenue runs dry? Well, that is something we'll have to handle at that point. Let's be honest, right? But the reality is, the question I constantly am asking us is, money is important here. Where do we put our budget? Where are our priorities? If we do, in fact, prioritize transit, if we do, in fact, prioritize housing, if we do, in fact, prioritize health, we'll put our money where our mouth is. And so we need to have a shift in our system. And I believe one of these is a bus. And if I could just go a little bit further into talking about housing, one of the ways for us to be able to increase affordable housing and keep people stably housed is actually we need to build out transit first and make our city more accessible by transit. Then afterwards, we build affordable housing around transit. Transit needs to come first before you build affordable housing, because now if you have transit near housing, then you don't need to build housing with a ton of parking garages. Then it allows people who are living in those affordable housing units to be able to get access to their workplace, to their schools, to their communities, or to whatever it is that they need to go to the park. And so there is this fast and free buses concept is one of the most important parts of my platform because it's intersectional on so many ways. It provides safe street safety. It provides safety in our communities. We get resources we need. It provides access to housing that we need. And it also interconnects our city and interconnects us as individuals to people we don't usually spend time with. So this is, I think, a really important aspect to our city that we need to be emphasizing and thinking about. And that's why I'm proposing fast and free buses.
So you've talked a lot about the free aspect. I'm curious about the fast aspect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
We all want fast.
Yeah.
you all already named it, right? Actually, so dedicated lanes. And then we need it. I mean, period, full stop, right? And then the other is, of course, I forgot the term already, but the lights that...
Oh, signal preemption.
Yes, we need signal preemption.
A radical idea, trains shouldn't have to stop at red light. So that a couple of like white Teslas can go
Crashed into.
And there's I don't think we've talked about this yet, but when you remove fare enforcement, fare collection, the buses are going to speed up because you can have a bus stop with one person, 5 people, 20 people. My kid takes a public bus home from school. There's like 20 middle schoolers getting on like different buses, like at different bus stops at any given time. And they're all having to tap their little go pass that they got. Half of them lost it, or they're having to use cash because they lost it, or they're getting in arguments with the bus drivers. We're talking like 11-year-olds. Yeah. They're getting in arguments with bus drivers. If you remove the fare collection, people can just get on the bus. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it speeds it up so much. You're not like standing in line having to tap, and the tappers don't work half the time anyway, so we're not actually collecting those fares.
Why are school buses so uncommon in Los Angeles? Because when I was growing up, people did not all drive their kids to school and like double park in streets and just wait outside of schools. I mean, I know people are busy and stuff, so it's like, is it just because it's impossible to get to school safely on foot? Or I used to ride my bike to school and stuff, you know, and I don't know, like I just don't see that many school buses here for such a big school population.
I could be wrong about this, but I believe in LAUSD you only qualify to get a school bus ride if you live 2 miles or farther away from your school. And so we live just slightly under 2 miles, more like 1.5 miles, 1.75 miles, maybe from my son's middle school. And so he doesn't qualify.
So he's too close to take the school bus.
But you know, what kid is, I mean, kids do walk those distances. Yeah. Like if you watch, you know, when middle school lets out, at least our middle school, there's clusters of kids waiting for different buses at different bus stops. And there's a lot of kids walking. And you know, some their parents are picking them up, and some are getting on school buses. Like it's a whole mixture of things. But yeah, they only even qualify for a school bus, I believe, if they live 2 miles or farther away. And so that's one reason that we need to really prioritize our city buses, whether it's like city or metro, and make it easier for literal children to get on a bus without having to worry about if they lost their tap card.
Well, another thing it seems like we could do is close off streets within a certain radius around schools before schools start and when they get out, so that kids can absolutely walk home without getting hit and killed. Yeah. And you know, and their parents don't have to go pick that. It seems like there's so many different solutions to try, but I know that anytime you propose anything that minorly inconveniences a motorist, like hell hath no fury, you know, like a minorly.
My elementary school used to have a thing called Walk to School Day where we would practice walking to school. They'd have everybody meet at the park instead of school, and then we'd walk all together, and it was really cute. But one day I showed up at school because I forgot it was Walk to School Day, and I was so sad.
I mean, that's what you want, right? You want to create a culture around like where you feel like you have FOMO if you didn't walk or you didn't ride the bus.
I think they should teach rider's ed in school, because I had to take mandatory driver's ed even though I had no intention of getting a car when I turned 16, because I lived less than a mile from my school and I lived less than a mile from my work and I rode my bike to work, and I was like, why would I want a car? Like, it just seemed like a hassle in a city. And that's the way it should be. But, you know.
So in the spirit of intra-host disagreement, I would like to throw my hat in support of free bus fare. My reason being largely a practicality thing. I have not had a car for going on 2 years, and I've been mostly car free for about 4. Or by choice, right? My partner, Kat, has never driven a car. She doesn't have depth perception, doesn't have peripheral vision. One thing that I found since I'm a student at SMC, since I've had a Go Pass as an SMC student, it is so easy for me to get on to get on a Big Blue bus, to get on a Culver City bus, to get on LA Metro, and to transfer between those things so fast. I don't have to think about it. In between semesters or in between classes, when I have to, 1, remember to put money on my tap card, 2, remember to bring the tap card that I put money on. I miss those things often. I freak out often about, I have to put money on my tap card before work. Now I'm late for work. It is such a pain for me to get around that way that like I'll just keep on taking a class just so I have the Go Pass, because like it makes my life so much easier. And on the flip side too,
you can never graduate.
I can never stop. And then too, I also have to do school in such a way that it actually sets me up into a financial position where I don't have to be constantly struggling and looking for how am I going to get myself in a better position. But on Kat's, for Kat's side of it, she being someone who has ADHD pretty hard, she recently got a life pass, and before that, she would only occasionally take the bus. And she's a fitness instructor in Santa Monica, and so before she would just walk back and forth all day, and it's probably about a 1.5-mile walk for her both ways in the rain or whatever. Or if she was running late or if it was raining, she'd take a ride share, which was very expensive. So when she got the life pass though, and also not having to worry about putting money on the tap card, worrying about your transfers, she was able to just get on the bus, go, get on the train, go. And now, like for us having date nights and stuff, it's great. Let's just take a bus and meet up. Let's go here and meet up. And neither of us have to worry about the practical, mechanical, disaster that is to probably ADHD people trying to remember to manage their tap cards. Yeah. And so if you don't have to worry about that, it is so much more likely that you're going to take it. Like in small sample size of 2 here, we take the bus and the train so much more just because we don't have to think about it. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, like, you remove that barrier for a whole subset of people. So I'm all for that, if for purely selfish reason.
And it's such a huge benefit to those who have to make a decision where the $12 it costs for the week that they have dedicated to transit, that they can only choose to go to work and back home, to the grocery store once and back home. But if they had options, they could swing by the park, swing by grandma's house, go see a friend. Do you know what I mean? And it changes the calculus by which we can finally be able to live easy and breathe easy. And like you said, it also changes this idea, the car culture that we have to move away from, so that we can finally say, hey, taking transit is normalized. And I think if you make it free, and we're going to start small with just the Dash bus, and hopefully we'll expand out further. But if you just start somewhere and start to change that culture, it will happen.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I'll just say before I have to bail, like I'm all for trying stuff out, and like it's weird to me how resistant we are as even trying stuff, like a pilot program, and the people are, we're gonna try to get parking on one side of the street on Vista Del Mar, and it's like, over my dead body, recall this man. Like, whoa, let's just chill out.
Eric had to leave at this point, so we said our goodbyes and continued on.
I did want to mention one thing, which is that transit is the second biggest cost to most households after housing. And that's something, so when we talk about affordability, this is one area that we should be engaging in. And it's because most people drive cars, which are extraordinarily costly, from owning the vehicle itself to the number of collisions you get into, and then the insurance that you have to pay to the gas or the charge, right? It's a huge expense. And so if in any way that we are able to cut out that expense, which of course public transit already makes it cheaper, making it free, of course, would make it even further cheaper. But there's an opportunity for us to move towards a city that actually prioritizes the dignity of people's lives over the labor that is unnecessary in just trying to get around the city and not being able to have a life because of it. And just the expense it requires with inflation going up and up, where, you know, the cost of eggs is costing so much money that you have to decide whether or not you're going to get eggs this week or you're going to take the bus to go to the park.
I think it would remove a lot of the stigma around public transit, because in an area in LA, like LA, that is many areas or many parts of the city are very affluent, you get judged for saying you took transit somewhere. Because I'm still trying to work on getting comfortable saying that when I go to events and people are like, oh, like, how was your drive? And I'm like, I didn't. And then they look at me funny. I'm like, it's normal to take the bus. It's fine.
I do really want to get rid of this stigma because, I mean, I'm biased though. I am a transit rider, so what can I say? But hey, one thing I didn't mention yet. So I've lived in Athens, Greece. I've lived in Rome, Italy. I've lived in Sydney, Australia. These are all places. I've lived also in Oakland, but we all know what that's like because a lot of us in California understand the transit situation in Northern California. But in all of these other countries, they are sprawling cities and their transit works. I did not own cars. And I also had 2 very small babies when I was living in Rome that I had to bring around using buses and trains. And it was perfectly great and fine. Except there was one funny story where I got my daughter onto the train because she was only 2 years old at the time and almost 3 years old. And she was too small to climb up into the train. And so I helped her up and then I got the stroller with my young baby and then the doors closed. And then I had to run after the train with my other baby in the stroller, chasing after my daughter who had been taken off. But thank goodness, Italians love babies. And they were so dear with her. And I was able to get the bus driver the train engineer to stop the train to be able to get my daughter, but that was a harrowing moment. So other than that experience, oh my gosh, transit, in just about every other country I've lived in, I've never had to own a car, right? In these major metropolitan areas, which with huge populations and with sprawling cities, we can have that here in LA too. It's possible.
Yeah, and I will say that it is currently possible to do in LA, but it is very difficult, including with children. I don't think I've mentioned yet that I am a car-free mom of 2. My kids do use public transit. They walk. We have been doing this, my husband and my kids and I, for over 12 years, but it has taken a lot of strategizing to make that possible in Los Angeles. And it's only possible because we have a rent-controlled apartment, which allows us to live in LA, that is close to major transit. We are close to the A line. We are close to multiple bus lines. We can get to the doctor. My husband can get to work. But when I was working in Koreatown, I was able to take the train to Koreatown easily. I deliberately picked a location to transfer to from my previous job that would be near transit. Like it is possible in LA currently, but it's hard and it takes so much thought and planning, and it shouldn't be so hard. We have, like you've said, right? We have the money here in LA, and we need the will, because it's something that people want. I genuinely think that, like, when we see things like Measure HLA and Measure ULA, like ULA in particular, housing, it got more votes than Karen Bass, I believe, in the same election. So a lot of these measures we put through, they're very popular. Like, these are things that people want. People want safer streets. They want more transit. They want affordable housing. And we just have lacked the political will to actually enact those things from our elected leaders.
Gabby, did I catch that right, that you and your partner are both car-free?
We are
with
both
2
car-free.
kids? That is really impressive.
Thank you. It is, we've worked it out, but it is tricky. And I will say we have a Zipcar membership that we will use like anytime we need to leave the city, basically, if we need to go anywhere. But that's pretty much the only time we use it. And I have used more Ubers while working on Rae's campaign, because as anyone running for office or even helping someone run for office will tell you, and I think I've heard this on your podcast previously, like, it's sometimes you just gotta be somewhere fast, and it's not feasible with our public transit always. But not yet.
That's
Not
true.
yet. Taking the occasional Uber now, and it is still occasional, but for the cause of electing my public transit mayor.
Perhaps last talking point, just for me to briefly mention, because this is close to where I work. Any thoughts or discussions to be had about the film industry and film industry work in Los Angeles? I know, I guess, like 2 dueling discussions around this that are constantly in my head. One is, making film work feasible without a car, which I have somehow miraculously been able to do for going on 2 years now, though I am the lunatic who shows up on the bus, who shows up on the bike, on the one wheel, and people are just like, what? And 2, the flip side of that is, if you work in the industry, it's always been up and down, but it's also like that kind of work has largely disappeared over the last year or 2 years. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on either transit accessibility for film workers and just the general state of the industry right now.
Yeah, totally. So we actually held a roundtable for entertainment workers and also creative content creators, just because those worlds are now overlapping in some capacity in some ways. But that is what the entertainment industry is, the 3rd largest industry here in Los Angeles. And it is something that has put us on the map in the world. And we're going to lose it if we don't keep Hollywood, or bring, I should say, because in a lot of ways, we already lost a lot of Hollywood into other countries and other cities across the country. But we need to bring Hollywood back to Los Angeles. Here in Los Angeles, we have some of the smartest, most creative artists, workers who are able to produce some of the most beautiful films and content that we can in the world, all in a small radius. But they have to leave the city to be able to create it, because we've not been able to ensure that you can be able to film here affordably and also, easily. And so one of the ways that we can do that is to lower the fees for especially small and medium-sized productions. We need to audit Film LA to actually keep them accountable, to ensure that...
Film LA.
You're familiar.
So, there's so many ways by which we are not supporting, in particular, our indie film creators right now and filmmakers. So what are ways that we can support them? We also need to make sure that the city, and this is a big talking point for a lot of our entertainment workers, is that not only were they talking about, being able to film here and bring productions back, but the other part of it was this city is so unaffordable that bringing production here is so difficult. So we need affordability on the level, not just for the workers who live here, but also so that way when they are doing productions, the cost of living is just a lot lower. So that way, if you do make transit free, as we've been talking about, that certainly will help people to be able to get around. I do make the argument that if you do make buses free, that more riders, more people who usually take cars, particularly new people who move to the city and come originally without a car, because a lot of folks do actually move from other major metropolitan areas and come without a car. They eventually buy a car because they realize they can't get around LA without it. So if we begin to move into a more transit-friendly city, people will move here, and then when they get here, they won't feel a need to buy a car, and we'll begin to shift that culture, and so we'll be able to make the city easier to get around, to be able to do all their filming and to get to their workplaces for their projects, because I know a lot of times they're only seasonal or during certain running for a certain number of weeks or months. And then the other side of it is we do need to make housing more affordable. And that's why I am advocating for social housing. Why? Because social housing is a system of housing that's going to not just make housing affordable for short term, but for the long term. And especially, I love the idea of being able to build workforce housing so people can live near where they work, and also even encouraging specific spaces. And this has been done in other places where there's social housing, creating co-ops and social housing that is dedicated for certain groups of people. So for example, single moms can live together and support one another. For example, an artist commune or an artist co-op, or for example, entertainment workers to be able to all live nearby and with each other so they can be more opportunities for networking and support. So these are options that we can have, that they are not new ideas. These are things that have been done and are successful. And I have to name that Stay in LA, which is an local organization who organizes entertainment workers. They have a list of demands that will be able to support entertainment workers to be able to support production here in Los Angeles easier. And I am in support of their recommendations and their platform. Just like in every other area of my platform, I am supporting local organizing demands and campaigns because the people know what they need. And so I support what local Angelenos are asking for.
And then to your point, Kyle, about like getting around at night because you often have odd hours as an entertainment worker. One of Rae's most popular videos that she's made was actually about having a nightmare and an office of nightlife. And a piece of that we included in that policy was having buses that run later at night. Like it's, especially depending on the part of the city you're in, and Kyle, I know you would know this, it can be impossible to find a bus to run at night. In my neighborhood, certain buses stop running after 8:30 p.m. like on a Friday. Yep. And so I've walked 2 miles home from the bar because the bus stopped running. And it's not like I was coming home at like 2 a.m. either. It was like 10 p.m. and there were no buses. But that's something that Rae is prioritizing, is trying to find out, like, how can we make our city still be a city at night? Like it's Los Angeles. We shouldn't be shutting down at 8:30 p.m. And we don't. Like people are still out there working, and we need to make sure that we're supporting that.
There's a huge opportunity, which is our night economy, that we have really not delved into. We have so many entertainers and artists here in Los Angeles, by which I'm the most creative late at night, to be very honest with you. A lot of us artists tend to be. That tends to be where all our creative juices come out. And also there's an opportunity for us to be able to lean into that night life that we have, where people can release and have fun, and we can entertain each other, and we can actually expand that economy. We have some of the best food in the world. We make some of the best cocktails in the world. Some of them are now mocktails in the world. So we might as well go and enjoy this nightlife, build out our economy into the evening, and then also be able to ensure that essential workers can get home safely at the same time. And one more thing that I forgot to mention around the entertainment worker platform that I have, which is that it's not just for entertainment workers, but just in a general concept, we need more third spaces. We need more third spaces where people can be able to come together, become more interconnected, spend time with each other, with people they may not normally get to meet, either because they want a new meet cute or because they want to get to know people they don't usually get to spend time with, because our circles are getting smaller and smaller because of the internet. So let's create those spaces, and those spaces can be, for example, places where creatives can come together in a local, public library or a kind of setting where we can share resources that you need to be able to produce your film. So you can share programs, be able to, for example, this is my favorite idea that I would love to see happen, which is to be able to have a public theater. Both a public movie theater where we can make it affordable for people to go watch old movies that we don't normally get to see. During the day, it can be an opportunity for filmmakers to be able to play their first version of their film, because they want to see it on a film on a big screen before they produce more. And it's also a place for people to come together and be able to hold spaces to show off their films and to spend time together in community. Also public theaters for plays. We have a lot of actors who not only do films, but also can be in plays. Why not expand that as well in Los Angeles in the same way that we've been seeing that in New York City, right? We can expand this industry that we haven't, that we want to lean into, because we have so many great playwrights and there's so much overlap between the film industry and the theater, so let's kind of connect it all.
I was very involved in my arts community in my hometown before I moved out here. When I heard you talking about doing, screening your first films or something like that, when I lived in Scranton, I used to do an editor's workshop where, as part of their art walk, they'd put us up in a venue, and if whatever you're working on, you would show it to the people in attendance, and then we'd give feedback and talk about how you made it, what you were doing. And we ran this group probably for about two years, give or take, and it was awesome, and that worked because there was just a venue for people to here, great, do this crazy thing, Yeah. And when I moved to LA, I found that I didn't necessarily have those kind of opportunities for weird, sludgy, kind of sloppy sometimes, but also very beautiful and very inspiring DIY indie projects, because it is so expensive to rent a space, and then, you have to monetize it to do that sort of stuff. So for me, that's been a big barrier for my artistic life. And a lot of the art that I do now is still I'll paint and I'll, do photography and stuff, but a lot of my music projects or film projects are all of my friends back from my hometown. It's great, I'll just take if I go visit my folks or something, take a longer trip. But it was one of those things that I thought about, the illusion of LA as being this big artistic inspiring place hasn't necessarily been there. I think it's capable, and I think it's a puzzle we can solve and we can make it happen.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, let's foster the artistic community here. Let's make sure that we're creating space, because all the people are here. Yeah. The talent is here, right? And so can we now make sure that we create spaces that are affordable and that are lively for people to, network, build relationships, build community, have fun, and also create.
Just maybe a quick affordability thing. Where I work in the industry as a sustainability consultant, and I largely, probably 80% of my work is with a vendor that is essentially a sustainability department team for hire. And we work on a lot of commercial productions. The way that health insurance works for PAs in the commercial world, I don't know about in the narrative world because I haven't worked there, is if you do 80 days on set on production's payroll, you're eligible for health insurance through its PHBP, something like that, right? The pit hole that I fall into, though, is because I largely work with a vendor and I'm on the vendor's payroll. I'm not privy to that health insurance agreement. So I haven't had health insurance for years because it doesn't fall that way. And because I was living in a very expensive city, both my partner and I got laid off. And so it was just struggle. Great, don't need insurance. So I moved downtown recently, and to be within a 20-minute bus ride of the vendor's warehouse, great, gonna get insurance, this is gonna be awesome. Then the film slowdown finally hit commercial work, and then commercial work just disappeared. And so now I'm back in the same spot right again. But I wonder too, and there's the production unions that the PAs recently unionized, and those of us that work for vendors or that aren't on production's payroll aren't privy to that agreement. And even then, a lot of the PAs who are in that, especially younger PAs, the union entry fee is as much as your month of rent. And a lot of us that have been out of work, well then, okay, I guess I'm just not going to work then, or jump industries or something like that. So it's it feels like the deck is largely stacked against, a lot of people who are you already have a job that is okay, you're a PA, we'll throw you into the meat grinder, whatever. And so even a thing that is meant to help people, not that it's necessarily like this, but my take is from a lot of people in that kind of thing that this is a very imperfect solution. And so we need to figure out something better. How do we do so? And especially as the people who are at the bottom rung of that kind of thing.
I actually plan on having an office dedicated to be able to be supporting the creative entertainment industry. And we do need to be able to focus on that. This is such a huge part of our, like I said, putting us on the map, supporting our economy here. And so the fact that we are not prioritizing the needs of our creative industry is pretty ridiculous to me. And so, and the the majority of people who have been, in particular, supporting my campaign actually have been entertainment workers who are in that middle ground where they're not part of a union and they're struggling to be able to have health care, to be able to maintain any sort of job that pays enough. They're working 3 to 4 jobs just to keep afloat. And they have a dream and they have these ideas and they have this artistic talent that they want to put in to something. And those are the folks who are really struggling. And so that's the area that I feel like we really need to, which is why affordability needs to happen across the board. I'm not just talking, when you say what's the need for entertainment workers, to cut the red tape and make the fee, lower the fees. It is to be able to change what's happening with Film LA. It is, being able to support small and medium-sized productions, for example, with a loan from the public bank. But the other side of it is just simply making the city more affordable for everybody.
And Ivy, any last thoughts that you want to talk about before we wrap up, or anything we missed, or anything else?
I do really enjoy your phrasing of things as using your imagination, because that makes it sound like very whimsical and like magical, and like, kids could be excited about this too, not just us adults who care about these topics,
Honestly, our kids have a way bigger imagination than all of us. And it's so simple. We're like, even the concept of sharing when you're in preschool, we're just saying, let's share. When we talk about, the basic economy of our city, right? Kids get that everyone just needs a home. Like, it's just so basic. And so I feel like we need to, I love that you named that. And also, we're one of the most creative cities in the world, having Hollywood here. So we totally can have a bigger imagination than we currently have.
How do y'all normally wrap up the podcast?
The transit magic wand. The literal.
If you had a magic wand that you could wave and one transit thing happened instantly, what would you use it for? What are your transit magic wand items? Gabby, do you want to start?
I can try and start us off. I'm going to start with my very gripey, nitpicky, uber specific one. That is, if I could wave my transit magic wand here in Los Angeles, I would resurrect the 256 bus that it had its route changed so many times, and I adapted every time they changed it. But this is a bus that literally had a stop a block from my house. My nearest bus is now half a mile from my house. But this bus stopped a block from my house. It went past both of my kids' schools. It, at one point, went past the hospital that my children were born at, and that is how I would go on that route when I was pregnant and very pregnant, and I would just take that route so that I would be near the hospital, and I would go to a cafe and okay, maybe today's the day. Okay, today's not the day. And I would take the bus home. I wanted to be near the hospital just in case. And it went past at one point a Whole Foods in Pasadena. It went past a Target. It went at one point on one of the different routes. It went to my best friend's house. I could get off right in front of her house. And then Metro, after changing the route several times, ridership's down. I wonder if it could be because you guys keep changing the route. But ridership's down, so we're going to cut the route in half. And it no longer went past my house. And they're it's serviced by Metro Micro now. You can just call Metro Micro every time you need to leave your house, person who no longer has a bus.
What is that even? I've seen it around, but
I've never called
one. It's a paratransit thing where I don't know how much it costs, but then
at one point it was $1 a ride. But then that doesn't appeal to me as a transit user. I'm not going to call my own personal vehicle. It doesn't matter how cheap you make it. This is not efficient. So they said, it's replaced by Metro Micro now, which I never used. And then eventually they're the ridership's really down. We're just going to give this bus to Pasadena. And so now it's a Pasadena bus, and it does still go past one of my kids' schools. And so we will actually take it sometimes. But that's my very gripey, I want the 256 bus back. Metro, you should bring back the 256 bus if you're listening.
Ivy?
Sure. Mine is kind of on the theme of fast buses. So this could be a hot take, but it doesn't have too much to do with the buses or trains themselves, but more so the transit app or just general navigational apps as of late. Because I feel like every time I look up or I mean, I usually know the routes of where I need to go, but depending on like when I need to get there and like what time of day I'm traveling, I want to estimate how long it takes. But the apps always underestimate. And I'm like, why do I always have to be so anxious about whether or not I'm actually going to make it on time because the bus is telling me I'll get there earlier than I will? So I would actually be okay if you told me it would take longer, but be accurate. So that's my current wish as of late.
For me, there used to be a bus that left from the train station on the E line that would go directly to LAX from where I live. And after the pandemic, or during the pandemic, they shut down that bus route and it's never come back. And I remember at one point I had to take my kids back from LAX back to my home, and my youngest daughter required a car seat to be able to come back, like a what is it called? A bumpers? Booster? A booster. My youngest daughter required a booster to be able to come back home. And so the taxi wouldn't take us back. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll take the bus. It would have required 3 buses and 3 hours for me to get back home from LAX with 2 small children under 5 years old to get back to my house. And I was like, I can't do that. Also, I was trying to get them back so I could take them to school too, because we were coming back on an early morning. So I ended up fortunately so no taxi driver would take me. The bus was going to be absolutely impossible between my suitcases and my 2 children, and 3 buses and 3 hours. And so fortunately my neighbor was able to pick us up, but I want a easy bus line, a bus line that can take me to LAX. I now can take the train into near USC, and then it takes me down to LAX on that new line that they just created. And the People Mover hasn't been installed yet, so you take a bus, to get there. That's okay. It takes maybe about 45 minutes, but I still really miss that bus because it used to be so fast. It would just be like a 25, 30-minute ride, and just like that, I'd be at the airport. So
yeah, we should have more buses to the airport and not more lanes to
oh my
the
gosh,
airport.
don't get me started.
Just buses, just more buses.
Yeah, and with those flyaway buses too, like I think because there used to be a bunch of them, right? There's only 2 of them now. That's Van Nuys and Union Station. But that's one of your only late night options to get out of the airport. I'm always stuck at the airport where I've just missed the last E line or the last C or the last K or the last BBB3. Oh, come on. So my transit magic wand item would be in the downtown LA bike lanes. I would like a bollard placed 2 to 3 feet from the entrance of every bike lane and exit of every bike lane, 2 to 3 feet out from the center of it. So whoever is pulling their car up to it gives you enough room that if you're on your bike, you can skirt around them and get into the bike lane. Because as it is right now, every drop-off driver will just go right up to the entrance of it, and you cannot get in there easily. So I think just that little tweak would make it so much nicer.
Big game changer.
Yeah, big game changer. 3 foot out, 1 bollard. Great. Easy. Well, okay. So Rae, thank you so much for having us into your home, and Gabby, and to, talk with you for many, many hours.
I know. We could talk for hours. This is a problem.
Rae can talk all day.
I know. This nerdy stuff, totally, I get into it. So if you ever want another conversation, I'm down.
I'm sure we will.
All the best with your campaign.
Yes, good luck with your campaign.
Thank you. I appreciate it.